Welcome to Confessions Beyond the Food. I'm your host, Nancy Redlin. Let's dig in and get inspired. Hi, and welcome back to Confessions Beyond the Food. My name is Nancy, and I'm with W3 Sales. Today, we are talking to Robbie. Hi, Robbie.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me on.
We're so happy to have you. Robbie is joining us from Houston, and he is a luxury chef, and he owns his own business. So he's got lots of fun things to talk to us about.
I do. The beauty of being a chef and the persona of famous chefs being very, very cool, and entrepreneurs being very, very cool. So I kind of have it both ways, but kind of want to talk about the reality of both and the benefits of it, and also how hard and the work that goes into it as well.
So before you became a chef, did you envision it being like, what did you envision it versus what it actually is?
So I've been in a professional kitchen since I've been 15, and I've known kind of exactly what I wanted to do since I've been 15, which is very unique in that situation. And so I always knew I wanted to be in the food industry, but I come from a family of entrepreneurs, so I like to set my own destiny as far as the harder you work, the more potential you have to make more money, have flexibility, and that type of thing. So I kind of geared my whole life towards this entrepreneurship journey in the food industry. I didn't know exactly what that was going to look like. I've always been in fine dining, so that has kind of morphed over the years from white tablecloth to something a little bit more modern and semi-casual. And I guess the journey's just gone from there. But I was really fortunate to have that vision from the very start, so I could kind of form my life to where we are now. So
That's awesome. It's so cool when you find something at such a young age that you just, you love. I loved waiting tables. I loved,
yeah.
I loved it. I didn't know what that, like you said, I didn't know it was going to lead me to where I am today, but I just kind of followed my passion. So what was it about the food industry that you just loved?
So I'm someone that has to like understand everything. Like my favorite question is why. And food's just something that came to me, and that just really comes natural. So the science, the ability to kind of mix flavors and do understand why food is cooked the way it is. And even cooking today, I always ask, why are we doing this? Is this something that is just fluff, or is this actually serving a purpose in the dish? And that could be from garnish to flavors to technique. And so my food is very kind of simple, but has multiple, my dishes could have 20, 25 different components to them, but they're all cooked very simply. Some are just using salt and then cooked properly, and when you're using really nice ingredients, that's really all you need.
That's awesome. I'm looking forward to tasting your food one day, Robbie, Chef Robbie.
Yes, absolutely, we'll have to have you down for a dinner.
Yeah, so it's making me hungry right now just thinking about it. So, if you haven't seen Chef Robbie's like LinkedIn and social, he does some really, really cool stuff. So, I guess when you started, you mentioned, a second ago that it is a hard journey to take. It's not always the road, that's the easy one, the easy way to take. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the interesting thing about being a chef is it's not something you can learn in a book. You really have to learn by doing, by working with other chefs and having the experience. And it's hard. It's 10-hour days, 12-hour days in a hot kitchen. I started off peeling garlic, mopping floors, washing dishes, and just move my way up from there. But there's a lot of things that you can learn online, virtually, get the virtual degree, And that's not really something you can do with, being a chef, especially in fine dining, because you have to learn the techniques, you have to learn the timing. If you really think about what it takes in, a restaurant or a fine dining restaurant, you've got to replicate, sometimes hundreds of plates of the same dish in the same way, presentation wise, in the same way, flavor wise, and it has to be absolutely 100% consistent and mirror the other dishes. Then you have to, get it out to the table. So I mean, having that, when you really think about it logistically, is a very, very difficult task just from that. And then you got to do it within 3 hours, and that's one dish. And then you got to replicate, 10 to 15 dishes or more. So you have to learn the recipes in your head. You have to know the techniques. You have to, also you're working with 3 or 4 different people to build the same dish. You might have the grill guy, doing the meat, and then the saute guy, doing the sides. And, then you have the executive chef who's doing the garnishes. So you really have to work very intensely with a team as well. And I don't think diners really realize what goes into making a dish, especially a fine dining dish as well. Which can be challenging as a chef, because their expectation versus the execution that it takes to go into it, I feel sometimes is skewed a little bit. It's like, hey, if this isn't perfect, it's going back, and so that's kind of the persona which diners have. The steak is a little bit overcooked or undercooked, it's going back. And then it goes back into the queue, and that messes up the whole timing, and that's a whole nother aspect of being a chef too. So it's very challenging in a restaurant or private fine dining, and that type of thing, which I don't think people fully realize what it takes.
Yeah, until you have, worked in a restaurant, and I think everybody at some point in your life should work at a restaurant, just to understand, because, now everybody's a critic, right?
Yep. Yep.
So, I mean, they're all critics, and I mean, and I guess, like, as working in a restaurant, you have a lot more grace, right? For
Yep.
that and the execution. But, luxury is a whole nother level, because I mean, how many, like, on average, like, what is like a cost, like the cost to have, per person?
So like what our dinners run, and we do it in home, we do fine dining. We're all inclusive, from, the wine to the staff. We bring everything. We bring all the rentals. We have in-house plates and glasses. So we're not only cooking, but we're bringing all the equipment, setting it up. And our dinners, run 250 to, $500 in total. But the amount of work that goes into it, it might be 2 or 3 days to get ready for, the event prior to even doing the event. We customize menus to food allergies. We customize menus to exactly what the customer wants. Seasonality, because, you don't want to serve strawberries in the winter, so it's something where you do have to change the menus all the time, especially when you're doing private fine dining. And I think it's one of the only industries, I think, that people say, well, that's too expensive, lower your price. You don't go into Walmart and say, hey, you know what? I think, this lawnmower is too expensive. I think I should pay, $250 instead of $500. Give me the lawnmower for that. And they go, oh, okay. That's what the really hard thing is, especially from a business standpoint, because food and cost has gone up, 40 to 60%. And everybody realizes that when they go buy groceries, but they want the price to be the same, and they want to set and kind of dictate the price, which is really challenging to try to make money as an entrepreneur, as a chef, because everybody has their own idea of, what that looks like. So it is extremely challenging from that point of view too, because I have a very, you only have so much time. So, and staff nowadays is, a huge cost. I mean, sometimes my staff is, just as much as my food cost or more.
Yeah, and I mean, your staff and the people, like you said, like you're relying on them to replicate, your creations and well, I guess like
Can't just have anybody, right? You got to have
right,
good staff, and good staff cost money.
plus
Um,
money. I know it's all gone up. I mean, I know like with the food, changes every I don't know if people know, but the cost of meat changes every week. And
yep,
so, I mean, you can't just say, "Oh, I'm going to buy this cut of meat at this price and it's going to stay that way." I can't they can't guarantee that price, it
right.
could jump up. So, there's a
And
lot
you
of
have to price it the same, right? And figure out how to make, money somehow else, or sell more plates, because when your cost is going up and your prices stay the same, your margin goes down, and your operating expenses don't go down from there. So, I mean, how we've kind of structured our business is small, 10 to, say 30, 40 people in home on site. And, it allows us a little bit more margin and flexibility to offer a premium experience, even if, the prices are fluctuating. But even on that, prime beef used to be $25, a pound. Now it's 40, and it's just like
wow.
absurd. And you just can't, it's hard to cut costs. And then when you're in luxury, you can't serve a select steak, even though, I mean, select steaks, even $20 a pound. And so it's definitely really challenging. And then balancing that as an entrepreneur, it's difficult right now, but we've expanded into, selling product and working with new homeowners to, sell cookware, because you have to find other forms of income to, really survive. And there's all these stories of entrepreneurs just making it rich and make millions of dollars overnight. And being a chef is so glamorous, and that's just really not the case. I wouldn't want to really do anything else, but it's definitely super challenging every day. It's not glamorous. It's extremely difficult.
Yes, I applaud and all the chefs out there because it's really hard. It's hard work. It's a daily grind, and it's kind of like sales. I mean, like you're only as good as your last, for you, your last meal you served, right? And so and then yeah, it's really, really challenging. And I always say to my friends are like, "Oh, I want to get in this business." So I'm like, "Don't get in because you'll get sucked in and they'll never want to leave." And it's not like it's for me, it's not about the money, I
Yeah.
mean, yes, I need money to survive and I am motivated by, that, but at the same time, it's not like super lucrative. And so, but we stay in it, and you need to hug your chef, the chefs around, and give them a hug because they do it because they love it, and they do it because they're passionate and they're really, really hard workers. Like it's not for the weak. So
Yeah, and events are very, volatile too. I mean, right now we're, it's slow because, the economy is doing its thing, and there's some other factors. So, events really, go on the back burner when people are cutting expenses, because usually they're for, celebrations, and people are just, cooking themselves. And, so the seasonality, which, you can compare year to year, but that really has no bearing on the next year. So you're like, where's all the people and the events? And so it's very kind of volatile in that sense. We've diversified, which is, we're very fortunate to do. And we do engraving and customization and, new home gifts and corporate gifts. But, even the corporate events, they're cutting back too. So, it's really an entrepreneur and a chef are like expert problem solvers. Like, I feel that's what I do every day, is try to problem solve, the next problem, which fortunately I'm pretty good at, but it's definitely something you wake up to a different situation every day.
Yeah. And something that keeps you up at night. So
Yeah, because just like a restaurant, expenses don't go down. Usually they go up. And so when you're slow, it's there's only so much that you can do. Just like in sales, people aren't buying, people aren't buying. And that's why as an entrepreneur, you really have to, you have to be creative. And
yeah.
really it's like a network thing too, because there's lots of opportunity out there, and it might just take one person to really catapult your business, but you have to find those people, and it's just a game of networking, really.
Yeah, the essence of selling is, finding new opportunities, I mean, just like you do, you have to find new clients and, so how did you go from like working, in, in the restaurants and the fine dining to owning your own, but to switching to a luxury chef?
Yeah, so kind of my story is I, grew up in Five Diamond Resorts. I went to the Culinary Institute of America in New York, got a 4-year degree from there. I then moved to Houston, worked at Sur La Table. I was their, resident chef, and built the program at the city center when the city center wasn't this monstrosity of, a Mecca hub. And after that, I really got into the appliance industry. So I always knew I wanted to start my own business, and they were doing cooking classes, demoing the appliances to use it as a sales tool. And I said, hey, would you guys like to do this in the showrooms? And, so that's when the live displays of, showrooms really started to be popular. And then we started to do the events actually in the appliance showrooms. And that's really what started my business, and filtered out to, private clients and, where we're at now. So I've been in the appliance industry for 13 years as, chef, salesperson. And that's kind of our little niche, is new homeowners, designers, builders, and then the new, home appliance industry, and appliances. So that's that's kind of how it, went, and you just kind of go from there. So
That's fascinating. I mean, I mean, that's something cool about this industry is you learn something new every day. Like I didn't realize there were people out there like you, Robbie, to go into people's homes and teach them how to use the appliances. And I mean, that's fascinating. So what is like the craziest project you've had to work on, like in terms of maybe a food or just like a house you would, I don't know. What's the craziest thing you've seen?
So, really for us, it's like the situational environments that we work in. So we could be, working in an appliance showroom, and there might be an oven that's live. There might be a full kitchen that's, live. And really there was one situation where they're like, oh yeah, everything's live. You got a, 48-inch range, you got double ovens, you got, all this stuff. And we showed up, and there's one oven live, and we were cooking a 5-course dinner. And
Oh,
that was extremely challenging. And it was for like 16 people. And so really I had to take the ingredients, change the whole, kind of concept menu on the fly,
oh my
and,
gosh.
to really accommodate, this one oven, turn it on broiler 550 so things would, cook faster. And so that was probably one of the craziest. And then it didn't have a sink either. It was a break room sink that was all the way across the showroom. And so yeah, that's pretty crazy. That's pretty challenging.
That's really challenging. So I guess suffice to say that like you work well under pressure.
Yeah, you have to. That's where the extreme problem solving comes into, and it comes into play, is you have to be able to adapt to your environment very quickly.
What is the most elaborate dish entree that you've created or dessert or
So my salads actually are pretty elaborate. I don't just do the, greens with dressing and a few vegetables. A lot of my salads contain 20 to 25 components in the salad. So I always do some type of cheese. I do a nut. I do usually like a cooked vegetable, a raw vegetable, or a pickle, greens, a vinaigrette, and then, some other different components as well. And that's presented in a very kind of deconstructed way because I like people to really kind of play with their food and make it their own. So, like my soups, it'll not have cream in the actual soup. I'll actually whip cream, no sugar, nothing in it except whipped cream. I'll put it on the edge. So, if they want cream, they can actually mix it into their soup themselves. So, I kind of approach food in that kind of fun, playful way.
That's fun. And that also, I mean, dictate, they can add a little, they can add a lot, I mean, for me, that's like always like, oh my gosh, I want to eat all the cream, but I don't really need it. So,
Right,
uh,
yeah.
yeah, but the salad, you said 25 ingredients.
Yeah,
That's
and some of them could just be a roasted carrot with salt. But, it's a special type of carrot. It's not like this big, huge honking horse carrot. It could be a globe carrot, which are little mini, kind of small bouncy ball size carrots where they look really unique. They taste very sweet. You don't even have to peel them. So it could just be multiple different ingredients that are high quality ingredients that just have salt and are cooked very well. So that's where that 25 components come from because a lot of people overcomplicate food.
so where do you get most of your food?
So we do, kind of smaller dinners. So we shop at Central Market for, the specialty ingredients. If we're doing, a large dinner, Costco actually has really great cheese and meat and, kind of some of those raw ingredients. HEB, also has great meat and fresh produce. So sometimes we'll shop at 3 or 4 stores just for one dinner and, really trying to source the right product from the right, source.
That is awesome. I mean, and that also can present problems too. I mean, because the consistency of, you might plan for this and then you have to adjust because it may not be available. Does that ever happen where it may not be available? Or, I mean, something happens
Yes.
between idea to plate, like,
Yeah, it's difficult because they might have it, but they might be out. And then you're like, uh-oh. So if it's like a product like duck, I try to pre-order it and make sure it's reserved for me. But once again, all this takes an extreme amount of time. So it's like it's a double-edged sword because you want great product, you need to reserve it, and it's all the planning that goes behind it too. Procuring the food, loading the equipment, doing the dinner, and then in a home, you can't show up 8 hours early to prep. When we do a 5 course dinner, we show up 2 to 3 hours early, and we prep the entire dinner from start to finish in about 2 to 3 hours because we're all cook on site. We don't cook everything off site and then bring it to the dinner because it just doesn't offer the quality that we're looking for. So it's also a lot more work and pressure to do that, but it's really what we feel gives the best quality product.
that's amazing because I don't know if you're listening and you're not in the food industry, like fine dining chefs, they're usually or restaurants don't open till like 5 o'clock. They're
Right.
not lunch places. And so people come and start prepping at like 10:30. So
Yeah.
that's amazing that you're able to prep, cook, serve these I mean, very complex meals. I think that's amazing.
I can
Um,
cook I've learned to cook very quickly.
I bet. And you have to have the right equipment too, so that performs
Correct.
really well. And you're kind of like moving that around, right? Or, you
Yeah,
don't
we
really
bring
know.
everything.
Like you said earlier, you don't really know. I mean, do I really have access to it or not? And will the oven perform? I mean, has that ever happened where
We work mostly for higher end clients, so usually their appliances suit what we're needing. We did have one event multiple years ago where it was a galley kitchen and it was an outdoor event. But we didn't know that the kitchen and the only pathway from the house to the outdoor was right through the galley kitchen. So, we're trying to cook food, serve food, and people are constantly in the kitchen. So there's a very big lack of space. So that was probably one of the most challenging events that we were, and it was just like 60 to 70 people and had one little 5 burner cooktop. Refrigeration space is tough because a lot of people have their fridges chocked full of stuff. So we don't usually have a lot of refrigeration space either. So that's why we really have to customize the menus too, because we have to customize it to where we're cooking, whether it's a showroom or a house or, even a corporate break room. We do fine dining and, corporate style break rooms and might do a 3-4 course dinner with no oven, no stove, and we bring sous vide machines and really kind of do it in a innovative way where we don't use major appliances.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. I mean, I can't, my mind is like, wow, that's crazy. So, oh, I had a question. I cannot remember. I'm sorry. I'm a little stumped right now. But so, what is like, how many events do you do a week?
So it just depends. It could be 3 back-to-back events, which is a lot for us. That's pretty exhausting because of how elaborate our events are. We could do, 1, we could do 3, we could do, none. A lot of times they seem to come in chunks. And so it just really depends on seasonality because we do corporate, we do appliance, we do private, and those also all have kind of their own seasonality with them. So we did try to diversify out of just the home private dining. So we did have a little bit more consistency of events because we do Iron Chef team builders too for corporations. So that's another one of the services we offer. So we do those really cool competitions, which can be a lot of fun.
That's awesome. My mind is like blown right now. I'm just thinking of all the things you have to do, and it's like kind of making me sweat. But so,
Me too.
so yeah, it's crazy. So in terms of like private dining and, chefs coming to homes, like, have you seen a spike? I mean, in the last like 5 or 6 years, I mean, is this now like, I mean, was it something that has always been like, like as strong, or do you think it's like, I guess opportunities for luxury dining and private chefs, is that on the rise? I guess that's my question.
Um, I don't really know, which is bad, because COVID really jacked up the market, because there's no in-home events in COVID. And so that, even restaurants and stuff, it's really made the industry even harder than it is already because there was, this 2-3 year, lull. So a lot of chefs and restaurants have had to diversify out of, just serving food. And now some of the restaurants and that type of thing is coming back. But there's been also a lull again because of, the economy or whatever is going on. And it's so much work to do, the in-home events. A lot of, chefs are just doing catering where they cook it off site, they bring it on site, they, display it. So we just kind of really had to do what clients want. Luckily we work in the, appliance industry and we demo appliances for new homeowners. So we're really offering, a value above and beyond, just feeding them. And so that's one niche that we've gone into. But, it's so up and down that I think people, especially in Houston, they've gone to a lot of restaurants. So they're gearing more towards in-home events so they can kind of customize it and offer, a different, more customized experience. Because some people are tired of going to the steakhouses and eating the same thing. So I think it is generally on the rise, But because in-home events are also, more expensive than going out to a restaurant, there's also that perception of, well, I can go to a restaurant for this, but an in-home event costs this, and it sometimes doesn't jive in their mind.
Mhm. But you get the experience of being at home and, I mean, impressing your friends, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I always look at, I mean, I'm a reality Bravo TV junkie. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, I was curious just because like they're always doing these in-home private events and
Yep.
it's super bougie. And like I've noticed on some of the trips, not many, but like on one girl's trip, like we had somebody come in and, cook a meal and it was like the coolest thing ever. I mean, and so that's I think the only time I've done that, but that was
We try to
really
offer an experience too. So like we talk about each dish that comes out and why it pairs with the wine. And sometimes we do, chef's table style where they're sitting right in the kitchen and we're, cooking and plating, right in front of them. So we really try to offer something a lot different than just your average, hey, sit down at the table, serve your food, get your wine, be good to go. We really try to offer that elevated experience, which I think that makes a big difference. If you're doing an in-home event, you want it to be different than eating in a restaurant.
yeah. I mean, and creating that experience and a different experience every time. And one more quick thing, I was thinking about when you said earlier, the allergies. I'm like, I know for me, like I have to, sometimes we do like lunch and learns and people will send us like, I'll say, oh, I'll bring in such and such food. And then there's like 20 different allergies. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like it was so stressful. I'm like, and I feel bad for y'all that if you have allergies, but it is a little stressful. I can't imagine for you and like all the
Well,
exceptions.
it's also about preferences too. So you can have like steak as a main course, like, well, I don't eat steaks. And then you got a sub, a fish, or hey, I don't eat fish. So you got a sub for a different protein. And then when you're executing the dinner, you have to remember that one plate. You have to usually cook, fish and steak completely different. So it's like cooking a whole different course, just because of a swap out or an allergy. And then if it's an allergy, I usually leave it completely off the menu. So there's not even a chance of cross contamination, especially in some serious allergies like shellfish or peanuts or, something like that. And then, it's all about the planning. So it takes me an hour or more to write a menu for a 5-course dinner, to incorporate all these different aspects. But, that's kind of what you get for the price that you pay. But people kind of take it as well, this should be how it is anyways. In certain ways, but it's just another aspect of kind of what we do. But it all takes time.
Awesome. That's incredible. I really appreciate you kind of, you know, lifting the curtain, showing us kind of what happens behind the scenes of these, well, I mean, that what you do is so fascinating. And so, but before we end, I can't let you leave without your confession.
Okay, so people being like a fine dining chef, they're like, oh, what's your favorite food? And you must eat so well. And they talk to my wife because she works with me, and they're like, oh, you must eat, all this amazing food. And we don't, because when you get done with a fine dining dinner, there could be steak left over or lobster or whatever, and you're just like, yeah, I don't want to eat that. So my favorite food is cinnamon toast crunch. And so
No way.
yeah, so I will eat if it's in the house and I can't even keep it in the house. I will like eat a whole box after an event, and it's terrible for you, but that's my favorite food confession. So
I love that. I mean, I love that. I always love to hear when chefs have their little like guilty pleasures in food. And it's so, like you said, it's so simple. It's not, it
it's
doesn't
not
have
cooked and it's cold.
that. Yes, that it's cold. You can have it with milk or without. Like,
Yep,
I can construct it or not.
yep.
So But thank you so much for joining us today. And you guys need to go and check out Chef Robbie. We'll have his information in the about this podcast. So check that out, follow him. And if you're in the Houston area, you might want to get together some friends and call them up and experience this yumminess. So
Yes, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
hey, thank you. Inspiration, follow our social media at W3 Sales. Please like, comment, and subscribe. You know, all the things. We would love to connect with you.